Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for an update on negotiations with our teachers union. Today represents the third day our students are not in class, and we want to share with you our efforts aimed at getting them back to school. Our bargaining team worked hard throughout the weekend, with school board members joining us in caucus at various points. I appreciate their continued in-person involvement and direction to bring a speedy resolution to contract negotiations and to get our kids back in school. As our school board understands, we have the responsibility to foster a school system that serves its students by both providing a high-quality educational program as well as operating a fiscally responsible organization. K-12 districts across Oregon advocated for the allocation of funds to support, at minimum, the current service level. That is true. With statewide advocacy, this was accomplished. Thank you to our legislators. However, making further investments, like in our workforce, now requires either increased revenue or dramatic budget reductions. Portland Public Schools has demonstrated its ability to effectively invest in areas that address the academic, mental, and behavioral health needs of our children. And it's among one of the few examples of where student outcomes are outpacing state averages. And we can continue to support our students to thrive only through the dedicated work of our educators. And I've said it again and again, our financial decisions to prioritize high-quality teaching and learning will remain at the forefront. We'll protect our direct student services and our school supports to the maximum extent possible. Students' success will always be our highest priority, and our proposals to PAT attempt to preserve that commitment. But we do have a fixed level of resources, and the proposals to date reflect our fixed and insufficient means. We're stuck within those means. Over the last week, people have called on our district to make budget cuts. That's been our reality since we began bargaining in January. Each package that we have offered to PAT since we started bargaining in January would require us to make cuts. The question is just how much and from where. With our current proposal, PPS will be required to make $51 million in budget reductions over the next 3 years, and it will require the use of our one-time reserves, bringing us down to the 5% minimum required by our board policy. And this is what I want our community to hear, so I'm going to say it again. Our current proposal will require PPS to make $51 million in cuts over the next 3 years. It'll require the one-time reserves being used, bringing us down to our minimum. Already, we have begun to contemplate what those reductions might look like, beginning with the central office administration taking a hard look at where it needs to make reductions. So once again, we're entering this week of talks. We hope to have positive negotiations starting this afternoon. We know that we're going to have to continue to listen and make compromises and propose solutions that will meet our educator workforce needs. Some of those areas which we spent some time on this weekend include the desire to provide relief to our educators in the way of planning and preparation time. I felt like we had some good conversations about what that might look like. We hope to be able to continue those conversations. And we're going to be taking some questions, but we're committed to staying at the table, continuing to bargain every single day. The mediator has already scheduled to bring us together this afternoon in through the evening as well as this weekend, and we'll continue to reconvene through the week and the weekend if necessary, whatever it takes to arrive at a resolution and get our children back in school. So they deserve to be in class. At the same time, our teachers deserve fair employment terms, but our community also deserves a sustainable contract that balances all of our students' many needs. So here with me today to help with any questions you may have, responses, our Deputy Superintendent Cheryl Proctor, Dr. Cheryl Proctor, and Chief Dr. Renard Adams here with me this morning.
Superintendent, what happens if you get to the point where you just say, okay, we'll do this, we'll give you what you want, and then essentially the punishment becomes, here's all the cuts to all these other groups, in other words, other employee groups, cutting days, closing schools?
Sure. Well, let's look at the framing of your question. There are many areas that are important to our Portland Association of Teachers. We would argue they're important to us as well. We have finite resources, so we can do more in one area and a little less in some other areas, or we can do a little bit in all the areas. What we can't do is turn up the dials in every area, because that's simply not viable. That's the answer to the first part of your question. The second part of your question?
In other words, if you go ahead and give them the salaries increases that they're looking for, and then turn around and make cuts to days, to other programs,
Right.
to other packages. In other words, at that point, don't you just sort of pass the buck?
Our interest is to make sure that Portland Public Schools is the employer of choice for all of our labor groups. And we have multiple labor groups with which we are in negotiations with. We have to ensure that we're taking care of all of them. It is true that in order to afford that, remember, the current service level that we were allocated takes care of the current service level. If you want to do more, then you need either more revenue or you need to make budget reductions. Now, the majority of our expenses go into serving students and supporting our school communities. The central office is 5% of the overall budget, so you could eliminate the central office entirely. You still have a big problem there. So it is true. It would need to come from those other areas, and that's where we are torn with striking a balance, because what I'm not willing to do is give up our students' quality school experience. I think we all think our students should receive a well-rounded education. I think they should all have arts and library and extracurriculars and athletics. And so there's a balance of making sure our students have a positive, well-supported experience, and at the same time making sure that our employees are valued and compensated at a level that we can viably provide.
Does the teacher union have access to these same numbers that you see? Are they saying something different?
We have been as transparent as possible from the beginning, both from our budget development last spring. We've continued to publish. You can find those on our website, the financials. We think part of the problem is that there doesn't seem to be still agreement on how big the pie actually is. And so I think until we have clarity there, which we've attempted to provide through multiple meetings with PAT, then you could understand why they're asking at a level that isn't viable, and we're living with the reality and the understanding of what resources we actually have available.
Then why is it they see the pie being bigger than you see the pie being bigger?
Well, that's a good question for them.
Superintendent, an October 23rd email to the teachers says that teachers who choose not to strike will be able to work and get paid. This sounds like an incentive not to strike to me. Can you explain?
Well, we respect our Teachers Association right to strike, to take collective bargaining action. There are some members who individually perhaps feel differently, who want to continue to serve children at this time, and as an employer, that avenue is available to them.
An email was also sent to coaches saying if you choose to strike, you will be unable to coach a fall or winter sport, whereas the district previously said that fall and winter sports would not be interrupted by this strike. That doesn't make sense to me.
I'd have to look at the text. What we didn't want to do is interrupt our students' fall season championship games and wrapping up their athletic season.
So no, it says here you may not continue to work as an athletics coach if you are a PAT educator who chooses to strike. So does this mean these athletic coaches who are striking are going to be let go from their positions?
Yeah, I don't have an exact question for you at this time.
Okay. Also, I have one more question. So I just have one more question. It's a question I think a lot of people have. So multiple legislators, including the one speaking today, said that in March you asked the legislature for $10.3 billion to fund public schools. They passed $10.2 billion, and now they're saying now you're asking for more, whereas the other school districts are making do with this amount. What is your response to the people saying the state gave you what you asked for, and now you're asking for more?
Because I think memories are short, it is true that myself, as well as superintendents and districts up and down the state of Oregon, early in the budget development process at the State House, we saw an allocation of state school fund at the time that seemed really inadequate. our advocacy was aimed at a minimum, you've got to get us to the current service level. We're glad that that was heard and listened to, and that the legislature arrived at that current service level, and we're thankful for it, and that's appreciated. We also advocated in other areas that we're pleased that legislators also saw as important, like early literacy, for instance, which has been a big focus here at Portland, and I think created a demonstration of what's possible there. That's the current service level, right? And so this has been our point all along. Nothing's staying current, including the desires of our teachers who want to raise. So in order to afford that, it requires more revenue or budget reductions. And I get it, the message is work within our means, but our means then is going to mean cuts, dramatic at some point, in order to afford compensation increases for any one of our labor groups. And therein lies the challenge.
I wanted to ask about a couple of financial allegations that have come up in the last week. One from the legislators in the letter who said that PPS spends less in the classroom and more on administrators than similar districts. And then two, the PAT statement yesterday that said that they have pointed to $125 million in untapped funding that could be used to bridge the gap. So just want to ask your response on both
Sure.
of those.
I don't know what that last part refers to, but it's true when you look at our operation that there's probably a few percentage points that we invest a little bit more in a centrally managed way. It doesn't necessarily go into a bunch of high-level managers. We as a district believe we play a role as an organization to support school improvement at scale. So you see coordinators, instructional coach network leaders, you see a lot of folks who are in the field every single day supporting the needs across the school portfolio. I would also, argue that, well, what is the appropriate level of central office support to schools that will allow you to continue seeing improvements in the outcomes of our students? Maybe we spent a little bit more centrally supporting schools directly, but I think we're one of the districts who also demonstrated a counter narrative to how students are doing across the state, where there needs to be a lot of work. So I think I would invite a dialogue around how school systems are using their resources to advance student outcomes, particularly students of color.
And maybe Renard on that second part. So despite Portland educators pointing to $125 million in untapped funding that could be used to help bridge the gap between both sides' proposal, did that come up over the weekend at all?
It is not. I don't know if they're talking about the totality of our fund balance, which we know we can't spend to zero. I'm not sure. Part of the challenge we're facing is there's not agreement on the numbers, right? And so I'm not sure where those numbers are coming from. Excuse me. We've repeatedly asked them to show us what areas they would propose we cut in order to make the investments that they're asking for. And so far, we've not gotten concrete answers. We continue to hear the money is there, and that just simply isn't concrete enough for us to identify where we could make reductions or redirections in order to meet their needs.
So, Dr. Adams, about the budget. You've repeatedly said, and it seems clear from their statements, that the two sides don't agree on the fundamental math. What precisely is being done to address the fact that the two sides don't agree on the math?
Well, what we've done for our part is we've met with them, I believe, 4 times in whole group and small group with our budget experts and their budget experts. We're trying to be as transparent as we can and open our books and show them the numbers that we're looking at.
You've done that recently?
I would have to get back with you, Julia, on the last date. It has not been in the last 3 weeks, so to say, but it has been within the last 6 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Quickly, I've got a question. I wasn't able to ask one. So we were hearing that the Education Committee Chair this morning said yesterday's negotiations took a turn in the wrong direction. Can you speak to that, and can you speak to some of the progress that you've made over the weekend when it comes to marketing?
Sure. I could give a description of how the weekend sort of went, right? On Saturday, we spent some time, the mediator is calling us into small groups with different subject matter experts around the topics that continue to come up. Class size, workload relief, and the like, student safety, discipline, and things like that. On Saturday, we heard a lot from PAT. We then went back to our caucus room and started making proposals, proposed languages, ideas that we could throw around. We thought there was some agreement around that. And then on Sunday, when we had those follow-up conversations, there was not an acknowledgement, I would say, on the PAT side that we met what we had agreed to or thought we had decided that we thought was agreeable language. Dr. Proctor could probably say a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. And as an example, we heard from our PAT bargaining team that teacher planning time was an area of priority for them. And so the district bargaining team focused on exploring certain strategies that could help to relieve that area. And we discussed with the PAT bargaining team elements of their proposal, which included concepts like adding an additional professional development day to the calendar so that teachers go from a 192 calendar day to a 193 calendar day. Their proposal also included increasing educators' workday to 8 hours, while at the same time increasing 15 minutes of student instructional day. This move will then bank time that we could use for professional development opportunities that they are actually asking for. It also included reducing the number and length of staff meetings that were once required, that are required for teachers, reducing that from 30 staff meetings a day to 30 staff meetings, a year, to 10 staff meetings a year, allowing for us to build back in more teacher planning time. Decreasing administratively directed time to increase and maximize teacher planning and preparation. And so after building a model aligned to meet some of these key concepts to their proposal, we now understand that their desire was for 2 additional teacher-directed planning days, which would eliminate student instructional days. And so PPS bargaining team plans to review the model. However, it's important to say that as a district, we value student instructional time as a mechanism to improve student achievement and learning outcomes, countering the effects that we saw with the recent pandemic. And so while we recognize the need to come to an agreement, we will go back and we will revisit the model. However, we also, recognize that the potential impacts of this strike on student learning is really great. And we don't want to see those impacts increase anymore. So we will come together and, again, work diligently and stay at the table until we could find a mutual agreement.
Dr. you said professional development days, but isn't what the teachers are asking for planning? Those are quite different.
Absolutely.
So why offer them an extra PD day when what they're seeking is an extra planning day?
Okay, thank you for that question. And so what's important to understand is that in our bargaining packages, we have over 31 articles that we have to address. And each of these articles have cost components associated with them. And some of these articles have required PD, required climate and culture days that we have to, by contract, provide to teachers. So what we found in the initial proposal was that it eliminated that PD time. And so what we can't do is put ourselves in jeopardy with violating the contract off the bat by completely eliminating professional development time.
So just as a closing statement, we heard one earlier this morning around how well the children in Oregon are doing. I want to dispel any notions that what we have here is an issue of mismanagement. We'll continue to make transparent the critical analysis we are doing both financially around all the efforts we are making to try to focus and concentrate our resources where they matter most, impacting our students. But I want to make sure everybody's clear. Portland Public Schools is first out of the gate here with a major bargaining with one of its labor groups. I think, and I hate to foreshadow eerily here, you're going to see an increasing number of situations like ours happening up and down the state, unfortunately. So thank you everyone for your attention. We're going to thank you for your attention to this important matter. We're going to stay attentive to it as well. We'll be at the table again in just a couple of hours. Thank you.